You are one of the best new rock artists I have heard in a long time.
Well, thank you,
And
man.
one of the things that really strikes me about you is it's really obvious that your style is culled from a very deep appreciation of not only rock roots, but roots of hip hop and other modern means of expression. You know, I liken hip hop to modern rural folk, not rural, urban folk music.
Yeah, I do too, man. I think for me, with the evolution of blues, blues has changed in so many different forms. And I think that when you think about hip hop is the most current form of the blues. You know what I mean? So definitely, I also liken the same hip hop in the same way, and that it's this urban folk sound, which is what blues was originally, was a folk sound that came from people of color and Black peoples in the United States. I think now that's more true than ever now for hip hop for sure.
You know what's interesting is that it had to go across the pond for Americans to start to appreciate. I mean, it was those imported records that were delivered on the ships to Liverpool that got into the record stores that really turned on the kids. A sound like they had never heard before, yet it resonated in such a powerful way and created the British invasion and a whole new movement.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. I 100% agree with that. Yeah, blues. At the time, I mean, it was the late '60s, early '70s. Blues was starting to die off as a genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it really did take, bands like the Rolling Stones and some of those early British rock bands that were considered British pop at the time, even to really show appreciation and a love for these blues artists in America, for it to come back around and to come around full circle. So you're absolutely right about that.
There was something about their appropriation, though, that was so different than what an American would do if they were performing it.
Very true. That's very true.
Yeah. When did you get into music? What did you first hear that inspired you?
I've been in music since I was a little kid, man. I used to hear stories of me shuffling to James Brown and, a lot of the Motown records and stuff. I remember I had an obsession with Michael Jackson. A bunch of kids my age did at that time, So, but I wanted to be just like Michael Jackson. I wanted to sound like him and do all that, So I mean, I've been into music since I could walk. It wasn't until I was I want to say about 7 or 8 years old that I taught myself how to play piano. I picked up the drums and kind of messed around on that, and then eventually at 13 I picked up the guitar and started teaching myself how to play guitar, and that was kind of the journey I've been on ever since. And here we are.
That's nice. That's great that you have a lot of background that way. But you also played some violin as well, didn't you?
I did. That's right, man. I played a little violin in middle school and high school, which I was absolutely terrible at.
That surprises me.
Yeah, I wasn't great at it. You know what it was? It's those kind of instruments, especially the classical form instruments. They take a lot of dedication to them. And as a kid, with all the electronics and things coming up in my era, I was just too distracted by other stuff. And my obsession with guitar actually was more prominent to me than it was with the violin. So, but I have a great appreciation. I mean, if you listen to my stuff, I have a vast appreciation for classical art forms. And I try to incorporate a lot of that, what I learned playing the violin, into my music as well. So you'll hear, I mean, even in Take Me Away, my current single, you'll hear string arrangements in the song if you listen closely and things like that. So I try to keep that close to my heart.
Who's your favorite guitar player? Do you have one?
No, I can't say I have one favorite guitar player, man. That's so hard. That's so tough, man. I can't even say one. Because there's so many different ways to play guitar. Like I definitely adopted the more Jimi Hendrix style of playing guitar, which is a thumb over kind of grip, thumb over, and it's a hybrid grip, which is allows you to play the solo and the chords at the same time. But there are cats like Van Halen who are more, that expands on that kind of style there. Steve Vai is another cat I could think of from that cloth, and there's like the Buddy Guys, and there's so many different ways to play guitar. I can't just choose one. But there have definitely been influential cats in my life. I'd say Jimi Hendrix was up there with that. I'd say Prince is definitely an influential guitar player for me. Stevie Ray Vaughan, all the blues cats were definitely influential for me as a guitar player.
It's funny when people talk about Prince as a guitar player. Some people use the phrase underrated. No, one of the greatest.
One of the greatest. I you know what, when they say that too, I tend to agree with that sentiment though, because whenever you look into, like, say that I've got my wife got me the the top 100 guitar players from Rolling Stone this year, in the magazine. And he's always listed in the middle of the pack, and that always blew my mind. He was listed in the middle of the pack thing, as incredible as he was. But I think it depends on who you ask. I as a guitar player myself, I think he's probably up there with one of the greatest. And I think a lot of people also fail to realize how influenced by Jimi Hendrix he was. A lot of his on that Purple Rain album, that's deliberately taken from Jimi Hendrix. The look, the style, everything was like a reincorporation of Jimi Hendrix. The color purple, even, that's a very Jimi nod to Jimi Hendrix. So I think when I listen to Prince, he's one of the greatest of all time for sure, man.
What about Frank Zappa? He's one of my favorite guitar players, not to mention one of my favorite artists.
Yeah, I love Frank Zappa too, man. There's nothing you can't. There are certain guitar players that are undeniably great and set a precedent for the guitar players to come. And Frank Zappa is definitely part of that conversation as well. Now,
you mentioned your wife. Do you have a family? Do you have a young family, or are you still thinking about that?
I do, man. I've got 3 kids, and I got a wife, and we're situated here and during COVID and trying to get through it, doing the homeschooling stuff, and then also breaking as an artist. So it's been a busy time over here for us. But yeah, we're pretty situated here, man. We got a nice little cozy home.
And you're in Seattle?
Yep. Yeah, we're in Seattle right now. Still based here.
How is the vibe there at this time? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. The vibe's pretty good here, man. You can't. I think we got a lot of press that kind of leans towards seeing a lot of the chaos. I think everybody's going through a little chaos right now with COVID going on, but I think the overall vibe in Seattle has been good, man. I live here in West Seattle. I live in a spot called Alki Beach, so I get to see a lot of different walks of life coming through here, and everybody's peaceful, man. Everybody's been really well,
And you've been managing to keep yourself fairly productive through all of this as well. Not to mention the fact that you have the extra time and everything to do it, but there's been opportunities for you to get out there in ways that you wouldn't have done a couple of years ago.
Oh, absolutely. It's been such an interesting time for me in that, here I am. I signed this deal back in 2019, about April or May of 2019, and I was set, man. I was really excited to get out and finally get to tour and push my music on the radio and really start to get into the major portion of my career, the major record portion of my career, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and kind of that all takes a back seat. But somehow, some way, we found a way to stay productive. Keep the single pushing. I finished my record, and so I've been working hard, man. Just trying to find. It's one of my favorite sayings was not sayings, but just sentiments was from Bruce Lee, man. When he says, "Be like water," when you expand when it's time to expand, contract when it's time to contract. In other words, I take that as just try to find a way to keep moving, keep the flow going, no matter what the circumstances. There's always a way to keep moving.
Yeah, don't try and swim upstream.
Exactly. The path of least resistance is the way.
Let's go back to what you were doing prior to getting a major deal. How did Ayron Jones get his feet wet, network, become a musician of note in Seattle, and eventually come to other people's ears so that you could be pushed out in a bigger way?
Yeah, the way I became known in Seattle was really just was grinding from the bottom up, man. I was really lucky to go to a high school that really embellished and really tried to embrace kids in the arts, So I was heavily involved in open mics at the school, and I was in performance arts. I sang in the vocal jazz choir, and I was in drama and all these things that I excelled at, the performance arts. And then once I was of age, about 17, 18, 19, I started hitting the coffee shops. 19 years old, I was putting together my first little blues outfit, hitting some cafes around Seattle. And then eventually I worked my way up to working into like kind of the dive bars and the scene and doing the jam sessions, man. Around here, my nickname's the Kid, and because I was always the young guy showing up at the blues jams, and trying to make a name for myself. And eventually I took that and just decided to do it full time. So it's been 8 years now, but I haven't had worked a day job. And I just kind of found my way on a different stages over and over again, started my own company. And then, found my way on opening for B.B. King and some of the biggest names in rock and roll history, man. Los Lonely Boys to Run DMC and Public Enemy to, all these cats. And, I laid out I dropped some independent records, notably with Sir Mix-a-Lot and another one with Barrett Martin. And in 2017, I hooked up with this management company. you know, they found me a deal after I kind of recorded some more material for a new record, and they found me a deal. So that's how it happened, man. But I had a really great indie career to start with, you know, and had a really great outfit and my own company that was doing really great. This is a ceiling you hit, though. You know, you can't, as an independent artist, if you don't really have somebody involved in your project that already has those connections, it gets hard to break that ceiling. You know, so in when 2019 came around, 2020 came around, I was very lucky to have the management around me to have those connections, and finally found myself here in the major label portion of my career, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. You hear about people, they came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Nah.
No, you just didn't hear about them for a decade prior to their emergence.
That's typically how it goes. I've talked to a lot of people about that, and a lot of people don't realize how long artists are already doing their thing before they get signed. And I think a lot of people look at the rap model too. You know, a lot of the younger rap artists, because you can put out music just from a laptop, or you can put out music from your room. A lot of the younger artists have the ability to go ahead and put their stuff out, whereas in rock, it's a little bit harder to do that unless you choose to take the electronic route. You know, so. It takes a long time to get there, man. Really making a name for yourself and getting that respect and earning your way to the top. You know, a lot of artists, I think young artists wish I wish I had a record deal. I wish this, I wish that, and don't really realize how much work goes into that, you know? And so it takes a lot to really get yourself ready for that. You know, I have I've got a new single coming out pretty soon here, and I have a ton of work I have to do. And my independent career prepared me for this, because I put all my work into doing the indie grind for a number of years. That as soon as I got across over to the major part, it was like butter. You know, it was a smooth transition. Whereas I think other artists, you know, people who get there quicker have a harder time transferring over into that part. You know?
Yeah, I think what the major labels are looking at, because they don't do as much investment anymore in development, they're looking at somebody that's determined to develop themselves, kind of like a ball player in the minor leagues.
Yeah,
you know, going up through
yeah.
the ranks, double, triple A, and eventually
Mm-hmm.
into the bigs, which is kind of analogous to what you did.
Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening these days, is that major labels want to see that artists are already established before they get there, you know, and it's all about your representation too, like who's on your side, who's vouching for you, who's speaking out for you. And that has to do with management and other people around you, agencies and things like that. So yeah, I'm very fortunate I found myself in the good graces of good people. You know?
Now, you talked about forming a company. I presume it's going to be more than just Ayron Jones, guitar player. Do you have aspirations to develop other artists, to produce, maybe get into other kinds of art, filmmaking, soundtracks? I mean, you know, the world's your oyster, kid.
Yeah, man, I really do have those aspirations. I always looked at music as my first passion, my first love, but I always know I have so much more to give in the art community and in the performance arts. And I've also, you know, just because of my own background, I have an affinity for working with young kids, especially in the Seattle area. You know, I spent a lot of time over my years as an independent artist, visiting classrooms and talking with kids and mentoring kids into finding their way into the music industry, you know. So, and some of the kids I've mentored have gone on to start their own projects. I had a kid that I was working with. He got a scholarship to Berklee School of Music, and you know, so I work hard I want to produce, I want to do all that for these kids, but I also want to get into doing film. I want to do all of it as much as I possibly can. And another inspiration for me was the first person I got a chance to really tour with was Janelle Monae, and in this group called Deep Cotton that I went to go tour with, and just seeing Janelle and watching her career. You know, we're about the same age, and just kind of seeing her career blossom in the way it was almost like a blueprint for what I wanted to do. So I think a lot of why I'm here today is from just being around that, you know.
Interesting. Do you have a guitar handy? Do you feel like doing something for us?
Sure.
The day my junkie mama abandoned me was the day I learned to lie. She kissed my face and said she'd be right back, before she walked away and cried. So take me away, just take me away from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place. from this lonesome place. From this lonesome place. Trouble! It's all I've ever known. How am I supposed to find some peace of mind if I can't stand to be alone? So take me away, just take me away from this lonesome place. From this lonesome place. From this lonesome place. From this lonesome place. Oh, won't you take me away? Say, won't you take me away? Just take me away. So won't you take me away? Oh, won't you take me away? From this lonesome place. From this lonesome place. From this lonesome place. From this lonesome place.
Nicely done.
Thank
That's
you,
a
man.
really heavy tune.
Yeah, man.
Lyrically, is it a cathartic thing for you to express?
A little bit, you know, it's a little bit. It's more therapeutic for me, I'd say, you know, in a way. But it definitely, you know, resembles a lot of the stuff that I went through as a kid, just kind of trying to find my own identity. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people that deal with abandonment. I mean, I even work with people in the industry. I mean, I work with tons of people in the industry. This is a really shocking fact that I learned, you know, as I'm raising, you know, the ranks is like, there's a lot of people that were adopted in the music industry, you know, and so, you know, as a kid, I dealt with abandonment and kind of figure out who I was as a person. And it wasn't honestly, I'm still finding out these days, but it wasn't until my adulthood that I realized who I really was and got to know even just like who I was as a person, who my family was, what my background was, you know. And so I think, you know, whenever I play that song, that's the kind of stuff that comes to mind. And I think that's why we you know, I chose it as the first single was so that, you know, for me it really represented who I was as a person. It was like my coming out story, and for so that's why, you know, I chose "Take Me Away" as my first single. And so whenever I play it, I'm always thinking about that. That this is who I am now. You know, you're a major label artist. This is what I do for a living. This is who I will be for the rest of time. You know.
And how does it relate to how you raise your kids,
You know,
your
it's
upbringing?
yeah. What it does for me is it makes it so that my kids, you know, I'm very aware of who I am to my children, you know, because I think the absence of parents kind of creates the longing for parents, you know. And so in my eyes, when I look at my kids, I go, you know, I don't want them to ever have to experience what it's like not to have their dad around or their mom around or anything like that. So I don't know. I think it's made me into a better parent actually, which is makes me lucky, because I know a lot of people that struggle with that, you know, and those feelings and things like that. So I found myself very fortunate to have a great family and to be able to provide for my kids and be there for them in the way that I have been.
It would be really nice that if we were sitting in front of each other, but thanks to remarkable technology, we're able to do this in these crazy times. And I know you're chomping at the bit, and I cannot wait to see you do your thing live. So
Yeah,
thank
man.
you so much for your time today. Have a
Hey, thanks for
wonderful
having me.
day. Best wishes to your family. And I know we're going to be hearing a lot from you for the decades ahead.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I appreciate you for having me, and thank you all for playing my music and just, you know, all that stuff's being done, man. It's all been surreal. So I appreciate you for being a part of that journey.
A pleasure to be with you.
All right. Well, take care of yourself now.